Part 1. The Edict of Happiness. The grand lie of modern civilization. Happiness is not a reward, it is an illusion. Arthur Schopenhauer. This whisper from the philosopher of pessimism, like a flash of lightning tearing through the night, briefly illuminates the most immense, intricate, and cruel deception of our age. From the moment we are born, before we can even form words, we are pushed by invisible hands onto a conveyor belt labeled the pursuit of happiness. From the happily ever after endings of fairy tales to the bright futures depicted in textbooks, from the expectant gaze of our parents hoping, as long as you're happy, to the valedictory speeches wishing us a prosperous and blissful life, happiness is forged into the ultimate goal of existence, an inalienable right, a binding contract of life that must be honored. It ceases to be a spontaneous, fleeting experience, a quiet echo in the soul, and is instead alienated into a metric of achievement, something to be quantified, displayed, and compared. We are told that we deserve to be happy, not merely as a possibility, but as a guarantee. This happiness should arrive as naturally as the sunrise, as effortlessly as breathing, as consistently as the beating of our hearts. And so, the modern human story, in its core script, revolves around this grand chase for happiness. Our every decision, from choosing a major to selecting a partner, from purchasing a product to planning a vacation, is driven by the silent, underlying question, will this make me happier? Our habits, our identities, every facade we present to the world must be meticulously crafted and curated around this central objective. A colossal happiness industry has emerged, permeating every corner of our lives with insidious grace. The algorithms of social media precisely target us with an endless stream of flawless smiles, spontaneous getaways, and picture-perfect family moments. Advertisers, with their glossy visuals, promise that owning a certain car, a particular perfume, a luxury item, will unlock the gates to paradise. The shelves of self-help sections groan under the weight of thousands of gurus shouting in bold titles, "The ultimate secret to joy. Master happiness in 7 days. The law of attraction. Manifest your dreams." The slogans of therapy are simplified into easily digestible maxims. Choose joy. Practice gratitude. Embrace positivity. All this information, like canned goods produced on an industrial assembly line, repeats the same narrative with mechanical precision and an unquestionable tone. Day after day, you are the master of your emotions. You should control them. You should keep them in a perpetual state of elation and positivity. In this cultural context, happiness is no longer an emotion. It has become a moral responsibility. Optimism has become a civic duty. Smiling through pain is lauded as a symbol of strength, while expressing sorrow is quietly labeled as weakness, failure, or even negative energy. We are no longer simply allowed to feel good. We are expected, required, and even commanded to feel good. Our era has constructed a gilded temple of happiness, telling each of us that we hold a ticket of admission. If we find ourselves lingering outside, unable to enter, the problem, we are told, must lie with us. This is the profound collective hypnosis of our time, and it is the very starting point of our journey into an inner wasteland. Part 2. The Paradox of the Chase. A soul exhausted by performance. Yet beneath this gleaming, gilded surface, a silent pressure is steadily accumulating, a heavy weight pressing down on every soul that wakes up feeling low, tired, confused, or simply not okay. For in this meticulously staged drama of happiness, unhappiness is not merely unpleasant. It is unacceptable, a system error in need of a swift repair. Consequently, the natural fluctuations of human emotion, the ebbs and flows, the light and the shadowware redefined as problems to be solved, symptoms to be treated, weaknesses to be overcome. This compulsory pursuit of happiness ensnares us in a tremendous paradox. Like chasing a mirage in the desert, the more desperately we run towards it, the more distant and illusory the oasis of hope becomes. The moment happiness is transformed from a natural, internal state into an external obligation and a task to be completed, it immediately loses its inherent freedom and lightness. It becomes a relentless performance, And we, all of us, are the utterly exhausted actors. We perform the role of the happy person on our social networks. We share filtered sunsets, artfully angled photos of lattes and pastries, and perfectly frozen smiles. We meticulously crop out the mess, the conflict, and the tears of our lives, all to present a public persona that conforms to the standard of happiness. We gather with friends, forcing laughter and discussing upbeat topics, while remaining silent about the deep-seated anxiety and fear within. In our families, we play the part of the emotionally stable pillar, swallowing all our grievances and fatigue to maintain the facade of a happy home. This performance consumes immense psychic energy. A quiet war, waged between what we truly feel and what we are told we should feel, is silently eroding our life force. The more fiercely we chase, the more disconnected we become from our authentic inner emotional world. We begin to doubt ourselves. This doubt arises not just because we feel sad or anxious, but because we are convinced we shouldn't. We feel guilty for our bad moods, ashamed of our unruly thoughts, and embarrassed by the tempestuous landscape of our inner world. This is no longer just emotional fatigue. It is escalated into a form of spiritual confusion and self-negation. For when every tear must be tucked away behind a smile, when every fear must be coated in a veneer of gratitude, we begin to lose our connection to something vitaler, full humanity. Ironically, this suppression and rejection of so-called negative emotions does not make them disappear. Instead, it causes them to resurface in more destructive forms. Repressed sadness can morph into a pervasive numbness. Denied anger can fester into bitter cynicism. Ignored anxiety can swell into an all-consuming panic. The harder we try to maintain positivity, the deeper we sink into the mire of toxic positivity, ultimately discovering that we have not only failed to attain happiness, but have also lost the capacity to feel our real emotions. We become strangers to our own souls, living in a hollowed-out shell, performing a one-act play for an empty theater, day after day. Part 3. The Forgotten Wisdom. The profound meaning of embracing pain. But what if the root of the problem isn't that we're not happy enough? What if the real problem is that we are not allowed to be unhappy? This is the great deception of modern life, a truth that thinkers like Schopenhauer and Kierkegaard saw with piercing clarity and tried to warn us about. They are the heretics in this cult of happiness, and their wisdom, in an age dominated by success gurus and pop psychology, is both jarring and profoundly necessary. Schopenhauer argued that life is fundamentally driven by a blind, insatiable will to live. The very nature of this will is to desire endlessly, and to desire is to be in a state of lack, which is suffering. Therefore, suffering is the default state of existence, the very fabric of being. So-called happiness and pleasure are merely brief interludes between two states of pain, the momentary respite after a desire has been temporarily quenched. It is like the foam on the crest of a wave, brilliant but fleeting. What supports it all is the deep, vast, and often turbulent oceanth, eternal reality of desire and suffering. To expect life to constantly deliver joy is, therefore, like expecting the ocean to remain perpetually calm. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of life's basic composition. For him, the pursuit of happiness is inherently futile, as it only leads to continuous frustration within the cycle of desire, culminating in deeper disappointment. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard approached this from another angle. He identified despair as a universal human condition, the sickness unto death. But his concept of despair was not simple sadness or depression. It was a deeper state of spiritual disharmony, the condition of not being one's true self. This despair takes two forms. One is despairingly not wanting to be one's self, trying to escape the authentic self by immersing in worldly pleasures, reputation, or the opinions of others. The other is despairingly wanting to be oneself, yet being tormented by the inability to transcend one's own limitations. In both cases, the individual is disconnected from their true self, which is a synthesis of the infinite and the finite, the eternal and the temporal. For Kierkegaard, this very despair, this anguish, is the sole pathway to spiritual awakening. It is a signal, a divine alarm bell, alerting us that we are living in a state of inauthenticity. It forces us to confront the truth of our own being and to make the most difficult and crucial leap of faith. Therefore, those unsettling moments of loneliness, anxiety, or inner crisis are not glitches to be eliminated. They are the catalysts for spiritual growth, the gateways to a deeper, more authentic existence. They are messengers carrying vital information about our soul's deepest needs. When we try to silence these messengers with cheap happiness and superficial positivity, we slam the door on self-understanding and spiritual transcendence. This forgotten wisdom teaches us that a life of depth is one that embraces its full spectrum, including the dark, heavy, and painful hues. It is in the shadows that we come to appreciate the light. It is through the friction of suffering that character is forged. It is in confronting the terror of nothingness that we find the freedom to create our own meaning. The purpose of life is not found in a state of perpetual happiness, but in the full, unvarnished experience of its complexity and its contradictions. Part 4. The Path to Liberation, from Performing Joy to Experiencing Truth. So, where is the way out? If the pursuit of happiness is a road to a dead end, how should we live? The path to liberation is not found in discovering a more advanced, more effective method for acquiring happiness. It lies in a complete revolution of perspective. To stop performing joy and start experiencing truth. This is an act of rebellion not against happiness itself, but against the cultural tyranny that deifies it and demonizes pain. This path demands that we stop looking outward for answers. We have been trained to be efficient, problem-solving machines. The moment we feel discomfort, we immediately initiate a search protocol, download the next meditation app, enroll in the next wellness course, follow the next guru with 1 million followers. We are besieged by solutions, but these solutions are not born of deep philosophical inquiry. They are born of shrewd marketing. In today's world, happiness is no longer a feeling. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry packaged in pastel colors and soothing voices. We are told that inner peace is just an app away, that clarity comes with a subscription, that fulfillment can be unlocked through a 5-step morning routine or a new gold-foiled journal. This is not self-help. It is self-surveillance. And the cost is not just financial, it is emotional and existential. Because once you believe that happiness is something you should have but somehow don't, you become the perfect consumer always, almost there, always one purchase away, always one breakthrough short. In the gap between who you were told you should be and who you actually are, a market is born. It sells not healing, but hope, not freedom, but the illusion of control. True liberation begins when we stop treating sadness as a flaw. When we no longer see it as an error to be swiftly corrected, we lose the ability to simply be with what is. We no longer see sorrow as a part of the human experience, but as a mistake to be fixed, preferably quickly, quietly, and without leaving a mark. Instead of listening to what our pain might be trying to tell us, we silence it, we distract, we scroll, we keep moving. We pretend we're okay, even when every part of us is calling for rest, for reflection, for truth. Over time, this avoidance becomes a habit, and that habit becomes a profound disconnection not just from our emotions, but from ourselves. Therefore, the path to liberation is an inward journey. It demands the courage to walk into the very inner darkness we have been conditioned to flee. Kierkegaard called this the path through despair, not to be consumed by it, but to pass through it, for it is only there, in confronting the fear, the doubt, and the death of old illusions, that we can be reborn. It is not a comfortable journey. It cannot be packaged into a morning routine or an online course, but it is the only path to real freedom. When we allow despair to do its work to strip away the false layers, to burn down the scripts that no longer serve us, we are left with something raw and real, a self that no longer performs, a self that no longer hides. And from this place, a new kind of life begins to take shape. It is one not built on the constant pursuit of feeling good, but on the deeper rhythm of truth. In that space, happiness loses its grip on us, not because we've given up, but because we've stopped demanding that life be anything other than what it is. And ironically, it's there, in that surrender, that something deeper, steadier, and far more honest begins to emerge. When we stop asking, "Why am I not happy yet?" and instead ask, "Can I be present with this moment exactly as it is?" we reclaim something essential. We stop fighting our inner world. We stop labeling emotions as good or bad, and we begin to meet ourselves fully and honestly for perhaps the very first time. This is not the kind of peace that comes from avoiding pain. It's the kind that arises when we move through it, when we stop running from our darkness and begin to listen to what it's asking us to see. Because the truth is, life isn't always joyful. It isn't always light. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's heavy. And sometimes it breaks us open so that something deeper can grow. And if we can learn to trust that process, if we can stop resisting the harder moments and start showing up for them, we just might find that the peace we've been chasing was never out there. It was here, inside, waiting for us to stop running. This kind of peace can't be bought. It can't be hacked. It doesn't come from affirmation apps or vision boards. It comes from being fully alive, messy, uncertain, real. It comes from honoring the full spectrum of what it means to be human, from daring to live without a mask, and from finding, in the stillness of our own truth, something far more powerful than happiness: wholeness.